We're back to the lockdown again. I finished Hollyland and I need a reason to get up again in the morning, like literally. And I loved writing it so much that I knew I'm going to write another romance novel and I'm going to base it somewhere that we had to cancel a trip to because of the lockdown. And Sweden's one of my favorite places in the world. I actually just got back from Stockholm 2 days ago. I've been there like about 10 times. And so that was one of many trips that had to be canceled. So I was like, mentally, that's where I wanted to go because that's where I was supposed to be. So I knew it was going to take place somewhere in Sweden, and that it was going to be a love story. And I so missed the collaboration of other artists and writers and scholars during the lockdown, which I didn't even realize how much I think of my life as an author as like very like solitary. Like I am alone most of the time in my computer, writing. But in actuality, I go to conferences, I go to book events, I go to the local coffee shop and talk to people like many times a week. So when you take all that away, it is a different kind of solitary. And I really miss those like conversations about creativity and that happen and ideas, just like talking about stuff with people. So I decided I was going to write a novel about a group living in seclusion while they are making a film about the meaning of life. And it was about the meaning of life because it was during the lockdown. And so we all thought we might die. And so I was thinking about the meaning of life. And Jean Mercier is the like dystopian, controversial filmmaker who always like tackles these like big topics. And he has a reputation with women and like he has some issues, but he's very cool, very artistic, has a singular vision. And he invites his friend Ella, who is a free-spirited bohemian American philosopher, to join them for the summer in Sweden. They're making a film about the meaning of life, and she's a philosopher, so it just fits. And of course, as soon as she shows up, the star Finn Forrester, falls completely in love with her. And it becomes their love story, but it really is more than a romance. I mean, I love the location shoot. I've written over 50 books. That is one of my like three favorites. I really love that book a lot. It's really about, well, in the first chapter, you see each of the characters in their own lives. So each of the actors and Ella, you see them in their own life, and they're each at a crossroads. They each have a major thing going on in their personal life, and then they leave to spend 3 months together making a film about the meaning of life. And so the friendships they develop, the romance between two of them, but also just making this film and having discussions about the meaning of life. This has a huge impact on all of them. And at the end of the summer, they all go back to their own lives, and you see them each in their own life, and they have to address that crossroads they were at. And then they meet 7 months later at the Cannes Film Festival for the premiere, and they reconvene on the red carpet, and you sort of see the deep impact of this summer on each of them, this creation and making this art and collaborating, but also the deep friendships. And so it's more than a love story to me. It's really about like what is the meaning of life, and how does friendship and love and creativity and art play into that? And you actually do get the answer on the last page for those wondering if they figure out the meaning of life. Of course they do. And I just loved writing this book so much. And it was supposed to be a one-off. I mean, I had no plans to, I just was literally trying to fill my time during the pandemic. And after I wrote that book, we were lifted out of lockdown and life started to become more normal again. But I just love these characters so much. And I felt like there was more to explore with them. So it ended up becoming a trilogy. And I wrote After the Red Carpet next, and then finally Cinematic Destinies. It is Ella and Finn building a life together. And she moves to his, Beverly Hills mansion, and is basically about them trying to like figure out like, how do you build a life with somebody else and retain who you are, which is important to both of them. And then how do you do that in the shadow of Hollywood, where there's different pressures and added pressures? And all the other characters are in the book too. So, but they're not in the whole book. So there are a couple chapters where everybody is together. And there are some new characters, and that book happens over a 5-year period. So you really see them living together, building a partnership, and starting a family. And by the end of that book, they have 3 kids, which then becomes the basis for Cinematic Destinies. So much fun for me because, first of all, most romance novels happen like dating up to like engagement or wedding. Like that's sort of the standard romance novel. And this is, After the Red Carpet is about people who just got married and like what do the first 5 years together look like. And you just don't see a lot of romance novels about that, which I think is really sad. I mean, like this idea that like if the romance ends like with I do, I think we're really in trouble. And just this idea of like, how do people grow and change over time? So, in the first book, Finn and Ella are in this like new love phase. That is a very specific moment in a relationship. But then what do the next 5 years look like? What does it look like when you start to have children? Which I say it as a mother. And my daughter had her 25th birthday yesterday. I love her more than anything, but having children adds a lot of pressure in your life and in your relationships. It just does. And there are just stresses that come along with that. And so I know why people don't cover this in romance novels because it doesn't sound very romantic. But I actually think it is if you like figure it out together and like build a partnership and also like how is he going to do his work and how is she going to do her work and how are they going to retain who they are and become more of themselves and not less. And so all of that is a part of that book. And I mean, I think I think After the Red Carpet is my most subtle book in a lot of ways. There are not like these big, huge plot points. It's very character driven. But I think it's really just this very lovely, heartfelt story. And I love it a lot. I love the whole series, so I'm biased. So after I finished After the Red Carpet, I still didn't know it was a trilogy. I just thought at that point I had 2 books. But as soon as I finished it, they had these 3 little kids, and I could see who these 3 kids were as adults. And I was like, well, I guess that means there's going to be another book. And that's how it became a trilogy. This was not planned. So the idea in Cinematic Destinies, it starts right before Finn and Ella's 30th wedding anniversary. So over the course of the 3 books, you see these characters for 31 years. So you really see the span of their relationship. It starts right before their 30th anniversary, and they have 3 adult children who are each living in a different place in the country. They each have different personalities, and they each have their own relationship struggles. And part of that is because they've grown up in the shadow of this like iconic fairy tale story that the whole world has sort of fallen in love with the love story of Finn and Ella. So what's it like for those 3 kids navigating that? And so we see what it's like. And so they're each in their own relationship. And I wanted all of the characters to come full circle because, of course, when you have the last book, I really, really, for myself and for any readers who might be kind enough to read them all, I really wanted to give them everything they would want. So the middle daughter, Georgia, is an actress following in her father's footsteps, and she is cast in what is supposed to be Jean Mercier's final film. He's 89 years old. He's making his final film, which is films in Iceland, one of my favorite places to visit. And she falls in love with a co-star on that location shoot, mirroring the story of Ella and Finn in the original book, the location shoot. And then we also have the stories of her 2 siblings. So there's lots of love stories. There's the 3 kids, there's Ella and Finn, and we get Jean Mercier's full story. Because to me, I mean, he's a supporting character to anybody reading this, but to me, he's always been a main character in my mind. So we get his story of what it means when your love it's not a person, but your love is making art. And what does that look like when you're 89 years old and you are looking back? Jean Mercier was actually created in Hollyland. We spoke about that book earlier. He was just mentioned on 1 page. I have Dee and Rye, the main characters. They're hosting a brunch at her house for a couple of his friends. and they're talking about art and film. And she says, my favorite filmmaker is Jean Mercier. And they're like, wow, he's only the most controversial filmmaker in the world. And they have this whole discussion about him as a filmmaker. And I sort of put it away in my mind. Gee, I'd like to know more about him. He's a good character. So then when it came for the next book, the location shoot, I was like, Jean Mercier, he's the filmmaker. So when it came to the final book, I really wanted to tell his story. I wanted to tell his story of what does it mean to choose a craft instead of choosing a person or a family in like any traditional sort of sense. What does it mean to live as like a road dog where you go on a location shoot your whole life and you're basically like living a nomadic life? Like, how do you look back on that? How do you make sense of it? What's important to you? And so there are a lot of discussions about the film he's making is called Beauty. And it's a metaphor, which I will let readers read if they choose to. But I will say that, I mean, he really talks about how, like, we're always searching for beauty in our lives, and really it's hiding in the little moments. And those little moments string together, and that's what creates our lives. So his story is told in full. And as for the other two siblings, so the eldest daughter is Betty, and she is very different from the rest of her family. The rest of her family, they're all, artistic and bohemian. And she is in a medical residency program. She's like very serious person. She moved to New York because in her mind, it's the opposite of LA. Like that's very la la. And she wants to, be where things are serious. And she has this really dear friend, Khalil, in her program with her. And it's obvious from the beginning that at a minimum, he has feelings for her. And maybe she does, maybe she doesn't. It's not clear, but she doesn't want anything to do with fairy tales or emotions or dating. And so you see why, and you see how her parents have influenced that. And then you see how that turns out. And then the youngest child is Albert. And he is living in Boston. He just finished college, studying graphic design, and he wants to like make comic books and that sort of thing. And he is struggling with his identity. He's gay, which in the beginning, but he's never come out to his father, which he is afraid to do. And he's a very shy person. And so being forced to be in the public spotlight has been the most difficult on him. And he is dating a guy who, wants to live openly and does not understand why, they can't live openly. And so you see them all like struggling with these stories. And I will tell you that without giving you the details, that in the end, the thing that pushes each of the three Forrester kids to their destiny is something that Jean, the filmmaker, sends them. He sends them a video. I'm not going to tell you what that is, but he sends them something. And in that video and in what happens next, all three books come together. And so I was very proud of this book. I think it's a beautiful book. I look at all the books differently, like some are good in this way, or they just give me this feeling. To me, this is the Cinematic Destinies is the most beautiful, the most poetic of the books. And it can be read as a standalone. Any of these three can be read as a standalone. Obviously, you get more if you read the whole series.